Look, I'm just going to say it. Most retirement advice is garbage. People throw around numbers like save $1 million or invest 15% of your income without actually showing you the math, without breaking down what that really means for someone making $65,000 a year with $30,000 in student loans and rent that's eating 35% of their paycheck. So here's what we're doing today. We're going to break down the actual math behind retiring at 45, not the fantasy version where you win the lottery or inherit money from a rich uncle. The real version, the version where you're starting from wherever you are right now. Maybe that's zero, maybe that's negative. Maybe you've got $10,000 saved up, and we're going to map out exactly what it takes. And here's what's crazy. It's more achievable than you think, but it requires you to understand some math that most financial advisors don't want to take the time to explain because, honestly, it's easier to just tell you to invest in index funds and wait 40 years. I'm going to show you something in the final 15 minutes of this video that completely changes the game. It's a calculation that most people never see, and it's the difference between retiring at 45 and working until you're 67. I'm not exaggerating. Stick with me. But first, we need to build the foundation, because here's the thing. You can't understand why the strategy works if you don't understand the math. And I promise you, this isn't going to be boring spreadsheet stuff. This is the math that actually matters. So, let's start with the question everyone's thinking. How much money do I actually need to retire at 45? Most people will tell you to use the 4% rule. You've probably heard this. You need 25 times your annual expenses saved up. So if you spend $40,000 a year, you need $1 million. If you spend $60,000, you need $1.5 million. Simple, right? Wrong. Well, not wrong exactly, but incomplete. And that incomplete part is what trips people up. See, the 4% rule was designed for a 30-year retirement. You retire at 65, you probably make it to 95. You're good. But if you're retiring at 45, you're potentially looking at a 40, 50, maybe even 60-year retirement. The math changes dramatically. Let me show you why. When we talk about the 4% rule, we're really talking about something called a safe withdrawal rate. It's based on historical data, specifically research that looked at rolling 30-year periods and figured out that withdrawing 4% of your starting balance, adjusted for inflation each year, would have worked in 96% of historical scenarios. But here's what's interesting. When you extend that retirement timeline to 50 years, that safe withdrawal rate drops. We're talking more like 3.5%, maybe even 3% to be really conservative. What does this mean in real numbers? Instead of needing 25 times your annual expenses, you're more looking at 28 to 30 times. So if you want to spend $50,000 a year in retirement, you're not looking at $1.25 million, you're looking at closer to $1.5 million. Now, before you close this video thinking that's impossible, stay with me, because we're going to break down exactly how to get there, and it's not as crazy as it sounds when you understand the actual mechanics. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's not easy. Anyone who tells you retiring early is easy is lying to you, but it's achievable with the right system, and that's what we're building here. The 3 buckets that change everything. Here's something most people don't understand about early retirement. It's not about having one giant pile of money. It's about having 3 different buckets of money and understanding what each bucket is for. Think of it this way. You've got money you need next year. You've got money you need in 10 years. And you've got money you need in 30 years. Those are 3 completely different animals, and they should be invested completely differently. Let me give you a real example. Say you retire at 45 with $1.2 million. Most people think, great, I'll just throw it all in index funds and live off 4%. That's $48,000 a year. Not bad, right? But what happens when you're 46 and the market crashes 30%? Now your $1.2 million is worth $840,000. You still need that $48,000 to live, but now you're withdrawing 5.7% from a portfolio that's down. This is what's called sequence of returns risk, and it's the silent killer of early retirement plans. Here's the smarter approach, and this is something I wish someone had explained to me years ago. Bucket 1.
2 to 3 years of expenses in cash or very short-term bonds. This is your sleep well at night money. If you need $50,000 a year, you've got $100,000 to $150,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account earning, let's say, 4.5% right now. When the market crashes, you don't care. You're not touching your stocks. Bucket 2, years 4 to 10 of expenses in more conservative investments. Think intermediate-term bonds, dividend-paying stocks, maybe some REITs. This is growing a bit, but it's not riding the full volatility of the market. Bucket 3, everything else in growth investments. This is your 10-plus year money. Stock index funds, aggressive growth, international exposure. This can afford to be volatile because you're not touching it for a decade or more. What's beautiful about this system is it solves the psychological problem of early retirement. You know you've got 2 to 3 years of expenses in cash, so when the market drops 20%, you're not panicking. You're not selling stocks at the bottom. You're waiting it out. And here's the math that makes this work. Over any 10-year period in market history, the S&P 500 has been positive. Yeah, there are down years. There are down decades if you pick the wrong entry point. But if you've got that cash buffer, you can weather the storms.
The real cost of living that everyone gets wrong. Okay, so we know we need somewhere between 25 and 30 times our annual expenses. But here's where it gets tricky. What are your annual expenses going to be in retirement? Most people make one of two mistakes here. Either they assume their expenses will stay exactly the same, or they assume they'll drop dramatically because they're not commuting to work or buying work clothes. The reality? It's complicated. Let me walk you through a real scenario, because this is where theory meets reality, and reality usually wins. Say you're currently spending $70,000 a year. That includes rent or mortgage, $1,800 a month, $21,600 per year. Food, $600 a month, $7,200 per year. Transportation, $400 a month, $4,800 per year. Insurance, health, car, and life, $800 a month, $9,600 per year. Utilities and phone, $300 a month, $3,600 per year. Entertainment and dining out, $500 a month, $6,000 per year. Travel, $4,000 per year. Miscellaneous and shopping, $800 a month, $9,600 per year. 401k contributions, $500 a month, $6,000 per year. Now, when you retire, some things change. You're not contributing to your 401k anymore, so that's $6,000 saved right there. Maybe your transportation costs drop to $200 a month because you're not commuting. That's another $2,400. So we're down to about $61,600 in annual expenses. Not bad. But wait, there's more to this story. Healthcare. This is the big one that everyone forgets about until they actually start planning. If you're 45 and retiring, you're 20 years away from Medicare. That means private insurance, and unless you're getting it through a spouse or you've set up some kind of business that qualifies for group rates, you're looking at $400 to $800 per month for an individual. Let's call it $600 a month or $7,200 per year. So now we're at $68,800. But here's something else. You have more time. That sounds good, right? Free time is the whole point. Except free time tends to cost money. You travel more, you take up hobbies, you go out to lunch more because you're not packing a lunch for work. In my experience, researching people who've actually done this, not the bloggers who were selling you something, but real people who retired early, expenses in the first few years of retirement tend to be about 90% of what they were during working years, not counting 401k contributions. So if you were spending $70,000 all in while working, including retirement contributions, you're probably looking at spending around $63,000 in retirement once you factor in the changes. Let's just round it to $65,000 to keep the math clean. Using the conservative 3.5% withdrawal rate for a long retirement, that means you need $1,857,000. Okay, before you panic, here's what I want you to understand. That number feels massive right now, but we're going to break down exactly how to get there. And the first step is understanding that you don't need $1.85 million on day one of retirement. You need $1.85 million by the day you retire. That's a huge difference. Actually, wait, I should probably explain something even more important first.
the magic multiplier, and why time is your best friend. Seriously, I know that sounds weird, but stay with me. Let's say you're 25 years old right now. You want to retire at 45. That's 20 years. You start with $0 saved. Actually, let's say you have $5,000 in a savings account from graduation gifts and working in college. You commit to investing $1,000 per month. That's $12,000 per year. Over 20 years, that's $240,000 of your own money that you've put in. If you get an average return of 8% per year, which is actually below the historical average of the S&P 500, but let's be conservative, do you know how much you'd have after 20 years? Take a guess. Seriously, pause for a second and guess. $589,200. Let me say that again. You put in $240,000. You end up with $589,200. That's $349,220 in growth. Your money more than doubled through compound interest alone. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say you're 30 instead, and you want to retire at 45. That's 15 years. Same scenario, you invest $1,000 per month at 8% returns. You'd put in $180,000 of your own money, but you'd end up with $347,423. Still respectable, but that's $241,597 difference compared to starting at 25. See what happened there? Those 5 extra years at the beginning made a $241,000 difference. This is what people mean when they say time in the market beats timing the market. Those early years are worth so much more because of compound interest. Here's the math that makes this work. In year 1, if you invest $1,200 and earn 8%, you make $960. Your account grows to $12,960. In year 2, you invest another $12,000. Now you've got $24,960 in there. You earn 8% on the whole amount. That's $1,997. Your account grows to $26,957. In year 5, you're earning returns on $68,000 plus, even though you've only personally contributed $60,000. By year 10, you're earning over $10,000 per year in returns without lifting a finger. By year 15, your returns are $25,000 per year, more than double your annual contributions. By year 20, you're earning $40,000 per year in returns without lifting a finger. This is the magic multiplier. Time literally multiplies your money. So when someone tells you they can't afford to invest because they need to focus on paying off their $20,000 in student loans first, here's what I want you to understand. That might be costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars in future wealth. I'm not saying don't pay off your loans. We'll get to debt strategy in a minute, but I am saying the calculus is more complicated than most people think.
The income problem and the real solution. All right, so we've established you need to invest somewhere around $1,000 to $1,500 per month for 20 years to hit that early retirement number. Now comes the part where you're probably thinking, cool story, but I don't have an extra $1,000 per month just lying around. I get it. And honestly, most people don't when they first start. But here's what's interesting. Retiring at 45 isn't really about having a huge income today. It's about increasing your income over time while keeping your expenses relatively stable. Let me show you what I mean with some real numbers. Say you're 25 and making $50,000 a year. After taxes, you're taking home maybe $38,000. Your expenses are $35,000 because you're living pretty lean. That gives you $3,000 a year, $250 per month to invest. That's not nothing, but it's not going to get you to early retirement. At $250 per month for 20 years at 8% returns, you'd have $147,255. That's a decent emergency fund, but it's nowhere near the $1.85 million we're targeting. But here's what changes the game: income growth. In a typical career, your income doesn't stay flat. Between promotions, job changes, skill development, and just general career progression, most people see their income double or triple between ages 25 and 45. Let's map this out with realistic numbers. Age 25, making $50,000, investing $3,000 a year, $250 per month. Age 27, making $58,000 after a job change and promotion, investing $5,000 a year, $417 per month.
Age 30, making $70,000, investing $8,000 a year, $667 per month. Age 33, making $85,000, investing $12,000 a year, $1,000 per month. Age 36, making $100,000, investing $18,000 a year, $1,500 per month. Age 40, making $115,000, investing $24,000 a year, $2,000 per month. Age 43, making $125,000, investing $30,000 a year, $2,500 per month. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where am I getting these raises and promotions? Fair question. And here's the honest answer. They don't just happen. You have to be intentional about it. But it's more achievable than people think if you actually have a strategy. Every 2 to 3 years, you should either be getting a significant promotion at your current company or you should be changing jobs. Why? Because job changes typically come with 15 to 25% raises, while staying at the same company usually nets you 3 to 5% annual increases. Do the math on that over 20 years, and it's the difference between making $70,000 and making $140,000. We'll get into the specific strategies for income growth in the next section, but for now, let's finish the math. If you follow that investment progression I just showed you, where you're gradually increasing your contributions as your income grows, do you know what you end up with after 20 years? $1,127,419. We're getting close, but we're not quite at that $1.85 million target yet. So what gives? This is where most personal finance content stops. They show you how to save $1 million and call it a day. But remember, we need almost $2 million for a comfortable early retirement, and we're only at $1.1 million with this plan. There's a missing piece here, and it's the piece I'm going to reveal in detail later in this video, but I want to plant the seed now. The missing piece isn't just about saving more, it's about creating income streams that persist into retirement. The career strategy nobody teaches. Look, if you want to retire at 45, your career strategy in your 20s and 30s cannot be the same as someone planning to work until 67. You're playing a different game with a compressed timeline. Most people treat their career like a marathon. Steady pace, don't burn out, enjoy the journey. That's fine if you're working for 40 years, but if you're trying to compress wealth building into 20 years, you need to treat your career more like a sprint interval workout. Intense periods of growth followed by consolidation, then another growth sprint. Here's what that actually looks like. Phase 1, ages 22 to 28. Skill accumulation. This is where you're focused on getting good at something valuable. And I mean actually valuable, not just following your passion. The job market doesn't care about your passion. It cares about skills that solve expensive problems. In 2024, the highest paying skills are in tech, finance, sales, and skilled trades at the upper end. But here's what matters more than the field. It's whether you're developing skills that scale. A software engineer can work on a code base that serves millions of people. A salesperson can close deals worth hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. A marketer can create campaigns that generate massive ROI. A project manager can oversee budgets of millions of dollars. These are scalable skills. Compare that to something like graphic design or content writing. Not that these aren't valuable, but in most cases there's a ceiling on what companies will pay because the impact is harder to measure and scale. During this phase, you should be optimizing for learning, not for salary. Take the job that puts you around the smartest people and exposes you to the most opportunity, even if it pays $5,000 less than the comfortable corporate job. Phase 2 is income maximization. Now you've got the skills. This is where you ruthlessly optimize for income. Every 2 to 3 years, you're evaluating whether you should A. push for a promotion at your current company, B. jump to a competitor for a 20 to 30% raise, C. move to a higher cost of living area where your skills command more, D. transition to a higher paying role adjacent to your current one. Let me give you a concrete example. I know a guy who started as a software engineer, making $75,000 at 28. By 35, he was a senior engineering manager, making $220,000. How? Age 28 to 30. software engineer. Learned the code base, became the go-to person for the most critical system. Asked for promotion to senior engineer. Got it. Now making $95,000. Age 30 to 32. Senior engineer. Started mentoring junior engineers, volunteered to lead projects. When a tech lead position opened up, he was the obvious choice, now making $125,000. Age 32 to 34. Tech lead, but he saw that engineering managers at other companies were making $160,000 to $180,000. He applied around, got an offer for $165,000 as an engineering manager at a different company. Used it to negotiate at his current job. They countered at $155,000 to keep him. He took it. Age 34 to 36, engineering manager. Crushed it for a year, then got recruited by a larger tech company for a senior engineering manager role at $220,000. That's $145,000 in income growth in 8 years. If he'd just stayed at his original company and taken their 3 to 4% annual raises, he'd be making maybe $98,000 by age 36. The difference in lifetime earnings? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. The difference in timeline to early retirement? Potentially 5 to 10 years. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to work in tech, but the principle applies across industries. You need to be strategic about career moves. Phase 3, ages 35 to 45, optimization and transition. By your mid-30s, you should have a strong income and you've been aggressively saving. This final phase is about 2 things. 1, maximizing your runway, pushing income even higher while keeping expenses in check. 2, building systems that can generate income without your active involvement. That second part is crucial, and it's something we're going to dig deep into later, but the basic idea is this. By your late 30s and early 40s, you should be transitioning some of your effort toward building assets that can pay you during retirement. This might mean rental properties, side businesses, dividend portfolios, consulting arrangements where you do limited work for ongoing fees. The specific vehicle matters less than the principle. You're creating income that doesn't require trading your time. All right, let's talk about the other side of the equation, expenses. Because here's the truth. You can earn $200,000 a year and still not be able to retire early if you spend $195,000. I know someone's going to comment that I'm just telling you to skip the lattes and that's not helpful. So let me be clear. I'm not talking about cutting coupons and denying yourself small pleasures. I'm talking about expense architecture, designing your life so that your big fixed expenses are optimized. Most people think about expenses as a bunch of individual items: coffee, lunch, Netflix, gym membership, whatever. But that's not how expenses actually work for most people. Here's the reality. 70 to 80% of your expenses are probably in 3 categories: housing, transportation, and food. Everything else is noise. So if you want to meaningfully change your savings rate, you need to focus on those 3. Let me show you what I mean with actual numbers. Housing. This is the big one. The difference between spending 25% of your income on housing versus 40% is the difference between early retirement and working until you're 70. Let's say you make $80,000 a year, $6,667 a month. If you spend $2,667 a month on rent or mortgage, 40%, that's $32,000 per year on housing. If you spend $1,667 a month, 25%, that's $20,000 per year. That's $12,000 per year difference. Over 20 years, investing that $1,000 a month at 8% returns, that becomes $589,020. Read that again. The difference between the expensive apartment and the modest one is over $500,000 in 20 years. Now, I'm not saying you need to live in a dump, but I am saying that most people make their housing decisions based on what they can afford, meaning the bank will approve them, rather than what gets them to their goals. Here's a crazy idea. What if you optimized for wealth building instead? When you're in your 20s and 30s, rent or buy the smallest place that's safe and functional in a good location. You don't need the second bedroom for an office. You can work from your kitchen table. You don't need the luxury building with a doorman. You need a place to sleep and store your stuff. Save the upgraded housing after you've built wealth. Trust me, the fancy apartment is way more enjoyable when you're financially independent than when you're stressed about money. Transportation. This is the one where people kill their financial future without realizing it. Let me just say it straight. Buying new cars is one of the fastest ways to destroy wealth. A new car loses 20 to 30% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. In the first year alone, it loses about 20% of its purchase price. By year 5, it's worth 60% of its value. So if you buy a $35,000 car, it's worth $28,000 after 1 year and $14,000 after 5. You just burned $21,000. Now compare that to buying a 3-year-old used car for $20,000. It depreciates more slowly now. Maybe it's worth $14,000 after 5 years. You lost $6,000 instead of $21,000. That $15,000 difference invested at 8% returns over 20 years becomes $69,969. And if you do this multiple times over your career, buying used instead of new every time you need a car, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in wealth preservation. I know the counterargument, but used cars need more repairs, the maintenance costs.
Here's the thing. Unless you're buying a total lemon, the maintenance costs don't come close to that depreciation hit. We're talking maybe $1,000 to $2,000 more per year in maintenance on a used car versus new. That's still a massive net win for buying used. Better yet, drive your cars into the ground. When I say into the ground, I mean 200,000 plus miles. Modern cars, especially from reliable brands like Toyota or Honda, can easily do this. You know what's even better than a 3-year-old used car? A 10-year-old used car that's been well maintained and that you drive for another 8 years. Food. This is the sneaky one because it doesn't feel like a big expense, but it adds up fast. The average American spends about $250 to $300 per person per month on food. If you're a couple, that's $500 to $600 a month, or $6,000 to $7,200 per year. But here's the breakdown. About 160 of that is groceries, and 140 is eating out or delivery. If you cut the eating out from $140 per month to $50 per month, 1 or 2 nice meals out instead of constant takeout, that's $90 per month saved per person, or $180 per month for a couple. That's $2,160 per year. Over 20 years at 8% returns, that becomes $106,514. Now, some of you are thinking, I don't want to live like a monk. I enjoy eating out. I get it. But here's the reframe. Right now, you're trading $100,000 plus in future wealth for the convenience of not meal prepping. Is that trade worth it to you? Maybe it is, but make it consciously, not by default. The key is this. Every dollar you spend is a dollar that can't compound for you. That's not necessarily bad. You should enjoy your life, but be intentional about where those dollars go. The debt equation that changes everything. We need to talk about debt because most people have it and it completely changes the math of retiring early. Here's the standard advice. Pay off all your debt before you start investing. Dave Ramsey says it, Suze Orman says it, every personal finance guru says it. And for some debts, they're absolutely right. But for others, it's terrible advice that could cost you years of compound growth. Let me explain the math because this is one of those things where understanding the numbers actually changes your behavior. Let's say you have $30,000 in student loans at 4.5% interest. The standard advice is to throw every extra dollar at that loan until it's gone. If you paid an extra $500 per month toward it, you'd have it paid off in about 5 years. During those 5 years, you didn't invest anything. Then, once the loan is paid off, you start investing that $500 a month. Now, compare that to this approach. You pay the minimum on the loan, let's say $200 a month, and invest $300 per month from day one. After 5 years, approach 1, loan is paid off, $0 invested. Approach 2, loan still has about $16,000 remaining, but you have $22,003 invested growing at 8%. Which position would you rather be in? You've got $22,003 earning 8% per year, $1,760 per year versus $16,000 in debt costing 4.5% per year, $720 per year. That's a net gain of $1,040 per year, and it compounds from there.
Over 20 years, the person who invested while paying off debt slowly ends up tens of thousands of dollars ahead of the person who paid off debt first, then invested. This is what financial people call interest rate arbitrage. If you can earn more on your investments than your debt costs you, you're coming out ahead by investing rather than paying off the debt. Now, here's the nuance that's really important. This math works for low-interest debt, student loans at 4 to 5%, mortgages at 3 to 4%, even some car loans if they're below 5%. It does not work for high-interest debt. Credit cards at 18 to 25%, payday loans at 300% plus, pay that off immediately. You're not beating 20% returns in the stock market consistently. Kill that debt as fast as humanly possible. Here's my framework. Debt over 8%, attack it aggressively. This is bleeding you dry. Debt 5 to 8%, depends on your risk tolerance and the specific situation. Probably lean toward paying it off, but not obsessively. Debt under 5%, pay the minimum and invest the difference. The math is in your favor. And here's something else to consider. Some debt can actually help you build wealth. A mortgage on a rental property that's generating positive cash flow? That's good debt. It's leverage that's building equity for you while tenants pay it down. This is exactly why blanket statements like all debt is bad or never borrow money are nonsense. The type of debt, the interest rate, and what you're doing with the money matters enormously. If you're 27 years old with $25,000 in student loans at 4.2% and someone tells you not to invest until those are paid off, that person just cost you potentially $100,000 plus in retirement savings. That's not hyperbole. That's just math. All right, we've talked about earning more and spending less. Now let's talk about the actual investment strategy that makes early retirement possible. Most people's investment strategy is basically put money in a 401k and hope for the best. That's not terrible advice for someone retiring at 65, but if you're going for 45, you need to be more intentional. Here's the framework I'm going to lay out. It's based on actual research and what has historically worked, not on what sounds exciting or what some influencer on Instagram is pitching. Layer 1. Tax-advantaged retirement accounts, the foundation. First, you max out everything with a tax advantage. 1. 401k up to employer match. This is literally free money. If your employer matches 5%, you contribute at least 5%. That's an immediate 100% return. 2. HSA, health savings account. If you have a high-deductible health plan, this is actually the best retirement account that exists. You get a tax deduction going in, it grows tax-free, and if you use it for medical expenses, it comes out tax-free. Triple tax advantage. Max this out if you can. $4,150 for individuals and $8,300 for families in 2024. 3. Roth IRA. $7,000 per year max, $8,000 if you're over 50. This grows tax-free and comes out tax-free in retirement. The Roth is especially good for early retirement because you can withdraw your contributions, not earnings, at any time without penalty. 4. Max out your 401k. After you've done the above, if you can swing it, max out your 401k. That's $23,000 per year in 2024, or $30,500 if you're over 50. If you're maxing all of these, you're putting away $34,150 per year. Do that for 20 years with 8% returns, and you've got $1,684,000. You're basically there.
But here's the problem. Most people can't max all of these, especially early in their career, so you have to prioritize. The order should be 401k to company match, HSA max, Roth IRA max, 401k max, taxable brokerage account. Layer 2, the taxable brokerage account, your early retirement bridge. This is crucial for early retirement, and most people don't talk about it enough. Here's the issue. Most of your money in 401ks and traditional IRAs can't be accessed before 59.5 without a 10% penalty. There are some exceptions, but let's keep it simple. So if you retire at 45, how do you live for 14.5 years before you can tap that money? This is where the taxable brokerage account comes in. You're investing in the same index funds, but in a regular brokerage account without the tax advantages or withdrawal restrictions. The downside, you pay taxes on dividends each year and capital gains when you sell.
The upside, you can access this money at any time without penalties. For early retirement, you probably want 40 to 60% of your wealth in taxable accounts and 40 to 60% in retirement accounts. That way, you've got money to live on from 45 to 59, and then your retirement accounts kick in after that. Here's what this looks like in practice. Say you're 35 and want to retire at 45 with $1.5 million. You might structure it as $600,000 in taxable brokerage accounts for ages 45 to 59, $400,000 in Roth IRAs, can withdraw contributions anytime, earnings after 59.5, $500,000 in 401k or traditional IRA for age 60 plus. The taxable account supports you for 14 years at roughly $43,000 a year before you touch retirement accounts. Then Social Security kicks in around 67 as a bonus. Layer 3, asset allocation, what you actually buy. This is where people get analysis paralysis. Should I buy individual stocks, growth stocks or value, international or domestic, small cap or large cap? Look, I'm not saying you can't allocate some money to these. If you want to put 5 to 10% of your portfolio into more speculative plays, go for it. But your core retirement money should be in boring, low-cost index funds that track the broad market. Why? Because the data is overwhelming. Over 90% of active fund managers fail to beat the market over 15-year periods. You know what that means? All those fancy stock-picking strategies and hot tips, they underperform just buying the whole market. And here's the thing about index funds that makes them perfect for early retirement. They're self-healing. Bad companies drop out, good companies get added in. You don't have to do anything. And the rebalancing secret. Here's something that sounds boring but actually matters. You need to rebalance annually. Let's say you start with 80% stocks, 80K, and 20% bonds, 20K. After a great year, stocks are up 15% and bonds are up 3%. Now you've got stocks $92,000, 84.4% of portfolio, and bonds $20,600, 15.6% of portfolio. Now you're more aggressive than you wanted to be, so you rebalance, sell some stocks, buy some bonds, get back to 80-20. Why does this matter? Because it forces you to sell high and buy low systematically. When stocks are doing great, you trim them. When they're down, your rebalancing forces you to buy more. This is psychologically hard, but mathematically sound. And over decades, it can add 0.5 to 1% to your returns, which compounds to tens of thousands of dollars. The inflation monster and how to slay it. We need to talk about something that terrifies every early retiree: inflation. Because here's the scary part. Let's say you retire at 45 with enough to spend $60,000 a year. Sounds great, right? But inflation averages about 3% per year. That means in 10 years, you need $80,635 to have the same purchasing power as $60,000 today. In 20 years, you need $108,366. In 30 years, you need $145,774. If you didn't account for this, you'd be in serious trouble. Your fixed amount of money would buy less and less each year. This is why the 4% rule includes inflation adjustments. You start by withdrawing 4% of your initial portfolio, then you increase that dollar amount by inflation each year. So if you retire with $1.5 million, year 1 withdraw $60,000, 4%. Year 2 withdraw $61,800, assuming 3% inflation. Year 3 withdraw $63,654, and so on. But your portfolio should be growing too, which is how this math works out. Over long periods, stocks have returned about 10% nominal, that's before inflation. Subtract 3% for inflation, and you get 7% real returns. That's why a 4% withdrawal rate is considered safe. You're taking out 4% while the portfolio grows at 7% real, giving you a 3% annual cushion to rebuild the portfolio and absorb market volatility. But here's what keeps me up at night and what should concern anyone planning early retirement. What if inflation is higher than 3% for an extended period? We saw 8 to 9% inflation in 2022. Historically, there have been periods where inflation ran at 4 to 5% for years. If that happens, and your portfolio only returns 7 to 8% nominal, Suddenly, your safe withdrawal rate isn't so safe. This is why I lean conservative on withdrawal rates for early retirement. The conventional 4% is based on 30-year retirements. For a 50-year retirement, I'd use 3.5% or even 3%. And here's another inflation hedge nobody talks about: flexibility. If you retire with the ability to earn $20,000 to $30,000 a year doing part-time work or consulting, if needed, you've just bought yourself enormous flexibility. A bad market year, you work a bit. A high inflation period, you supplement your portfolio withdrawals with earned income. This is actually one of the strongest arguments for early retirement. You're young enough to work if you need to. You haven't burned bridges. You can always go back if circumstances demand it. Compare that to retiring at 67. If things go wrong financially at 75, your options are way more limited.
The healthcare maze, the early retiree's biggest challenge. All right, let's tackle the elephant in the room: healthcare. This is the thing that stops more people from retiring early than anything else. And honestly, it's a legitimate concern. If you work for a corporation, you probably have health insurance that costs you $200 to $400 a month with your employer covering the rest. The actual cost is more like $700 to $1,200 a month, but you never see it. When you retire early, you see it. All of it. Let me break down your options, because this is complicated and most people get it wrong. Option 1, spouse's insurance. If your spouse has a job with benefits, you're golden. Get on their plan. This is the easiest solution, but obviously not available to everyone. Option 2, COBRA. When you leave a job, you can continue your employer's insurance for 18 months through COBRA, but now you pay the full premium, the part you paid plus the part your employer paid, plus 2% admin fee. For a typical plan, this might be $800 to $1,000 a month for an individual, $1,500 to $2,000 plus for a family. COBRA can be good as a bridge, especially if you have ongoing medical issues and don't want to change doctors or networks, but it's expensive and temporary. Option 3, ACA Marketplace, healthcare.gov. This is where most early retirees end up. You buy a private plan through the ACA Marketplace. Here's where it gets interesting. Your premiums are based on your income. If your income is low because you're living off savings, not earned income, you can qualify for subsidies that dramatically reduce your costs. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you're a single person retiring at 45 in 2024. You're living off your taxable investment account, selling stocks to generate $45,000 a year in income. At that income level, you'd qualify for premium tax credits. A plan that normally costs $600 a month might only cost you $250 a month after subsidies. But here's where it gets tricky. You need to be strategic about your taxable income. If you can keep your modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI, below certain thresholds, you maximize subsidies. This means withdrawing from Roth IRAs, not counted as income, selling stocks strategically, only the gains count as income, not the principal, not doing Roth conversions or taking traditional IRA distributions in your early retirement years. Some people even do this thing where they retire with $1 million in Roth IRAs and $500,000 in taxable accounts. They live off the taxable account for 15 years, generating minimal income from capital gains, while staying under the subsidy thresholds. Then, at 60, they start tapping the Roth, tax-free, and transition to regular retirement. It's essentially a strategy to get subsidized healthcare during your early retirement years by keeping reported income low, even though you're financially comfortable. Option 4, healthcare sharing ministries. These aren't technically insurance, but they're an option some early retirees use. You pay $300 to $500 a month into a pool, and when you have medical expenses, the community shares in paying them. I'm not going to lie, these make me nervous. They're not regulated like insurance, they can deny claims, and they have all sorts of restrictions. But some people swear by them, especially if they're young and healthy and just want catastrophic coverage. Option 5, geographic arbitrage. Here's a wild card.
Some countries have way cheaper healthcare than the US. If you retire early and you don't have kids in school tying you to one location, you could spend significant time in places like Portugal, Thailand, or Mexico, where quality healthcare costs a fraction of US prices. You'd still want some US coverage for when you're stateside, but this can dramatically reduce overall healthcare costs. The real healthcare budget. Here's what I'd actually budget for healthcare as an early retiree. Ages 45 to 50, $600 to $800 a month individual, $1,200 to $1,500 a month family. Ages 50 to 55, $700 to $900 a month individual, $1,400 to $1,800 a month family. Ages 55 to 60, $800 to $1,000 a month individual, $1,600 to $2,000 a month family. Age 60 to 65, Medicare kicks in and costs drop dramatically to $200 to $400 a month. These numbers assume you're using ACA marketplace plans with some subsidies. Without subsidies, add 50 to 100% to these numbers. Over 20-year early retirement, ages 45 to 65, that's roughly $200,000 to $300,000 in healthcare costs. It's not nothing, but it's also not the barrier people think it is if you plan for it. The side hustle multiplier. Okay, here's where we start getting into the advanced stuff, the strategies that can cut years off your timeline. Most people think about retirement income as save money in investments, withdraw 4% a year, done. But what if you could generate $1,000 to $2,000 per month in semi-passive income during retirement? That changes everything. Let me show you the math. If you need $60,000 a year to live, and you're using the 3.5% rule, you need $1,714,286 saved. But if you can generate $15,000 a year, $1,250 a month, from side income, you only need $45,000 a year from your portfolio. At 3.5%, that's $1,285,714. You just reduced your retirement number by $428,272. That could be 4 to 5 years of work. Now, I'm not talking about working a part-time job in retirement. That defeats the purpose. I'm talking about building income streams in your 30s and early 40s that can continue with minimal effort after you retire. Here are the realistic options. Rental real estate. This is probably the most proven path. You buy rental properties that generate positive cash flow.
Let's say you buy a duplex for $300,000. You put 20% down, $60,000. Mortgage is $240,000 at 7% interest. Payment is roughly $1,600 a month, including taxes and insurance. You rent out both units for $1,400 each. That's $2,800 a month. After mortgage, you're cash flowing $1,200 a month. Some of that goes to maintenance, vacancies, property management. Let's say you net $600 a month after everything. That's $7,200 a year from one property. Get 3 of these, and you've got $21,600 a year in rental income. The beautiful part, your tenants are paying down your mortgage. In 20, 25 years, you own the properties free and clear, and that $1,200 a month becomes more like $2,400 a month per property because there's no mortgage. Plus, real estate appreciates. That $300,000 property might be worth $500,000 in 20 years. The downside? It's not passive. There are calls about broken toilets, there are evictions, there's management. But if you use a property management company, which takes 8 to 10% of rent, it becomes pretty passive. Digital products. This is the dream. Create something once, sell it forever. Online courses, ebooks, templates, software tools, stock photos, music, printables, etc. The hard part is building the audience and creating something people actually want. But if you can do it, the economics are beautiful. Say you create an online course teaching people how to use Excel for financial modeling. You sell it for $200. In the first year, you sell 100 copies. That's $20,000. But you did the work once. Year 2, you sell 80 more copies with minimal marketing. That's $16,000 for almost no work. Year 3, 60 copies, $12,000. Over 5 years, you might make $60,000 to $80,000 from something you created once. That's not life-changing money, but it's meaningful supplemental income.
The key is creating multiple digital products. One course making $5,000 a year isn't much. 10 courses each making $3,000 to $5,000 a year. Now you've got $30,000 to $50,000 in annual passive income. Dividend portfolio. This is the most boring but reliable option. Instead of just investing in total market index funds, you allocate some money specifically to dividend-paying stocks or dividend-focused ETFs. If you build a $400,000 portfolio of dividend stocks yielding 4%, that's $16,000 a year in dividends. You don't have to sell anything, you just collect the dividends. The downside is dividend stocks typically grow slower than growth stocks, so you're trading total returns for current income. But in retirement, that trade-off might make sense. Small business or consulting. If you're good at what you do professionally, you might be able to transition into consulting or starting a small business that doesn't require full-time work. Maybe you're a project manager who consults for $150 an hour, 10 hours a week. That's $78,000 a year. Even if you only do this for part of the year, that's meaningful income. Or maybe you start a small business, something like a niche e-commerce store, a mobile app, a subscription box service. It requires some ongoing work, but way less than a full-time job. The point is this: if you can create $1,000 to $2,000 a month in income streams that don't require 40-hour weeks, you've dramatically reduced the amount you need saved for retirement. The geographic hack. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Where you retire matters a lot. $60,000 a year in San Francisco means you're struggling. $60,000 a year in Nashville means you're comfortable. $60,000 a year in Thailand means you're living like royalty. I'm not saying you have to move to Thailand, but I am saying that geographic flexibility can cut years off your retirement timeline. Let me give you some real numbers. According to cost of living data, high cost of living, San Francisco, New York, Boston, Seattle, comfortable lifestyle is $80,000 to $100,000 a year. Retirement number needed at 3.5% is $2.28 to $2.86 million. Medium cost of living, Austin, Denver, Portland, Atlanta, comfortable lifestyle is $55,000 to $65,000 a year. Retirement number needed is $1.57 to $1.86 million. Low cost of living, Nashville, Indianapolis, Oklahoma City, Midwest generally. Comfortable lifestyle is $45,000 to $55,000 a year. Retirement number needed is $1.29 to $1.57 million. International, Portugal, Mexico, Thailand, Colombia, comfortable lifestyle is $30,000 to $45,000 a year. Retirement number needed is $857,000 to $1.29 million. See the difference? The choice between retiring in San Francisco versus Nashville is literally a $1 million decision. And here's what's interesting. You don't have to choose just one location. Some early retirees do what's called geographic arbitrage. They spend winters in a cheap place with good weather, like Mexico or Thailand, summers in a moderate place, like Portugal or Midwest US, and visit expensive cities occasionally. You get variety, you keep costs down, and you're not locked into one location. The math is compelling. If you need $85,000 a year to live in Seattle, but only $50,000 a year to live in Nashville, that's a $35,000 difference a year. That translates to needing $1 million less in savings. You could retire at 42 instead of 47. That's 5 years of your life. Now, I'm not saying money is everything. Maybe you love San Francisco and all your friends are there and it's worth working extra years to stay. That's a valid choice. But make it consciously. Most people just accept their current location as a given without doing the math on what it's costing them.
The tax optimization playbook. If you're serious about retiring at 45, you need to understand taxes. Not in a boring accountant way, but in a how do I legally keep more of my money way. Because here's the thing, it's not about how much you earn or how much you save. It's about how much you keep after taxes. Let me show you why this matters. Person A makes $100,000, saves $20,000, pays $25,000 in taxes. Effective savings, 20%. Person B makes $100,000, saves $20,000, but through smart tax planning only pays $18,000 in taxes. Effective savings, 27%. That extra $7,000 a year
invested for 20 years at 8%, becomes $345,000. That's real money from the same income and same lifestyle, just better tax strategy. So what does smart tax planning actually look like? Strategy 1. Max out pre-tax contributions. Every dollar you put in a traditional 401k or traditional IRA comes off your taxable income. If you're in the 24% tax bracket and you contribute $23,000 to your 401k, you just saved $5,520 in taxes that year. Over 20 years, that's $110,400 in taxes you didn't pay. You will pay taxes eventually when you withdraw, but here's the key. You'll likely be in a lower tax bracket in early retirement than during your peak earning years. Strategy 2. The Roth conversion ladder. This is an advanced move, but it's powerful. When you retire early, your income drops dramatically. Let's say you were making $120,000 working, but in retirement you're only showing $35,000 in taxable income from your withdrawals. You can use this low income period to convert money from traditional IRAs to Roth IRAs at very low tax rates. You pay taxes on the conversion, but at your new lower rate, not your old higher rate. Example, you retire at 45. From age 45 to 55, you're in the 12% tax bracket. You convert $40,000 a year from traditional IRA to Roth. You pay 12% tax on it. When you were working at age 40, you saved that money at 24% tax rate. Saved 24%. Now you pay 12% to convert it. You just won a 12% tax arbitrage game. Plus, once it's in the Roth, it grows tax-free forever and comes out tax-free. Strategy 3. Tax loss harvesting. If you have money in taxable brokerage accounts, you can use losses to offset gains. Say you have a stock that's down $5,000. You sell it, capturing the loss, immediately buy a similar but not identical investment to maintain market exposure, and use that $5,000 loss to offset gains elsewhere or deduct against ordinary income. If you're in the 24% bracket, that $5,000 loss saves you $1,200 in taxes. Doing this systematically every year can save thousands in taxes over decades. Strategy 4. Capital gains harvesting. This is the opposite move, and it's brilliant for early retirees. In years when your income is low, long-term capital gains below certain thresholds, $44,625 for single filers in 2024, are taxed at 0%. So if you retire and your income is only $35,000, you can sell investments with $9,625 in gains and pay $0 in federal taxes on those gains. Then you can immediately rebuy the same investments, resetting your cost basis higher. This means when you eventually sell them later, you'll have less taxable gain. Smart early retirees do this every year. They realize gains in the 0% bracket, effectively giving themselves tax-free income. Strategy 5. State tax arbitrage. 7 states have no income tax: Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, and Wyoming. If you retire in one of these states instead of a high-tax state like California at 13.3% top rate or New York at 10.9% top rate, you save massive money. On $60,000 of retirement income, that could be $5,000 to $8,000 a year in tax savings. Over 20 years, that's $100,000 to $160,000. Some people even do this strategically, work in a high-income state during peak earning years, then move to a no-tax state for retirement. Now let's talk about the psychology of early retirement. Because here's the truth. Most people who could retire early don't, and most people who do retire early struggle with it initially. The math is actually the easy part. The psychology is way harder. The identity crisis. For most people, their job is a huge part of their identity. When someone asks, "What do?" you say, "I'm a software engineer," or "I'm a teacher," or whatever. When you retire at 45, that's gone. You're just, what? Retired at 45? People don't know how to process that. You don't know how to process that. I've read interviews with dozens of early retirees, and almost all of them talk about going through an identity crisis in the first year. Who are you if you're not working? What's your purpose? This is why having a plan for what you're going to do in retirement is as important as having a plan for how you'll pay for it. The most successful early retirees don't just retire from something, they retire to something. A passion project, a cause, travel, family time, creative work, learning, something that gives them purpose and structure. The social pressure. Let's be real, early retirement is weird in America. Our culture is built around work. When you retire at 45, people think you're either rich and lucky, B, lazy and irresponsible, or C, had family money. Very few people understand that it's the result of 20 years of intentional choices. You'll get comments, must be nice, I wish I could afford to not work, don't you get bored?
This is why many early retirees don't actually tell people they're retired. They say they're consulting or working on projects, or they just pivot the conversation. The FOMO problem. Here's a sneaky one. You retire with $1.5 million at 45. 5 years later, the market has been on fire, and your coworkers who kept working now have $2 million plus in their retirement accounts. You start thinking, if I had just worked 5 more years, I'd have so much more money. This is the scarcity mindset creeping back in. You're comparing your wealth to others instead of asking, do I have enough for the life I want? The answer is probably yes, but it's psychologically hard to stick with that answer when you see others accumulating more. The one more year syndrome. This is the killer. You hit your number, let's say $1.5 million, but the market's been volatile, or you're nervous about healthcare costs, or you just got a big promotion. So you tell yourself, one more year, just to be safe. Then next year comes. You've got $1.7 million now, but inflation's been high, and you're doing well at work, so one more year. This pattern can continue indefinitely. I know people in their 50s who could have retired at 45 but kept saying one more year. Now they're 53, they have $3 million, and they're still working. At some point, you have to trust the math and take the leap. Otherwise, what was the point of all that sacrifice? The spend-down anxiety. This is huge. Your whole life you've been trained to accumulate, save, save, save. Every month you check your account and feel good when the number goes up. Then you retire, suddenly every month the number goes down. You're withdrawing $5,000 a month to live. Even though this is exactly what you planned for, it feels wrong. It triggers loss aversion, the psychological principle that losses feel about twice as bad as equivalent gains feel good. Successful early retirees have to mentally reframe this. The portfolio isn't shrinking, it's funding your life. That's literally what it's for. Some people find it helpful to separate their accounts mentally. One account is spending money that you withdraw from monthly. The other accounts are wealth preservation that you mostly ignore. All right, let's get concrete. I'm going to walk through 5 actual scenarios with real numbers showing how different people could get from zero to early retirement. These aren't perfect or one-size-fits-all. They're templates you can adjust based on your situation. Scenario 1. The high earner. Starting age 25, starting income $85,000. Income growth reaches $160,000 by age 40. Savings rate starts at 25%, increases to 40% by age 40. Retirement age 45. Year by year. Age 25 to 27, earning $85,000, saving $21,250 a year. Age 28 to 30, earning $100,000, saving $27,000 a year. Age 31 to 33, earning $120,000, saving $36,000 a year. Age 34 to 36, earning $140,000, saving $49,000 a year. Age 37 to 40, earning $155,000, saving $58,000 a year. Age 41 to 45, earning $160,000, saving $64,000 a year. Total saved over 20 years is $876,250 in contributions. At 8% annual returns at $2,176,000 at age 45.
This person can safely withdraw $76,160 a year using the 3.5% rule, more than enough given they were living on $96,000 to $104,000 during working years after savings. Scenario 2. The moderate earner. Starting age 27, starting income $55,000. Income growth reaches $95,000 by age 42. Savings rate starts at 15%, increases to 35% by age 42. Also builds side income, rental property generating $800 a month by age 40. Retirement age 47. Year by year. Age 27 to 30, earning $55,000 to $65,000, saving $8,250 to $11,700 a year. Age 31 to 35, earning $70,000 to $80,000, saving $17,500 to $24,000 a year. Age 36 to 40, earning $85,000 to $90,000, saving $27,200 to $31,500 a year. Age 41 to 47, earning $95,000, saving $33,250 a year. Total contributed $467,650. At 7.5% returns, $1,045,000 at age 47. Add rental property worth $320,000, mortgage paid down to $180,000, so $140,000 equity, generating $800 a month equals $9,600 a year. Total portfolio, $1,185,000 plus rental income of $9,600 a year. Can withdraw $41,475 a year from the portfolio plus $9,600 from the rental equals $51,075 total. This works because their expenses were around $61,750 during working years, but dropped to $50,000 to $52,000 in retirement, no commute, paid-off car, etc. Scenario 3. The geographic arbitrage play. Starting age 30, starting income $60,000 in Nashville. Income growth moderate, reaches $90,000 by 45. Savings rate 30% average. Plans to retire in Portugal where living costs are 40% lower. Retirement age 48. Year by year. Age 30 to 35, earning $60,000 to $70,000, saving $19,500 average. Age 36 to 42, earning $75,000 to $85,000, saving $24,600 average. Age 43 to 48, earning $90,000, saving $27,000. Total contributed $432,300. At 7.5% returns, $887,400 at age 48. Needs only $40,000 a year to live well in Portugal. At 3.5% withdrawal, needs $1,142,857. Shortfall, $255,457. But factor in Social Security starting at 67, been working for 37 years, will get about $2,000 a month to $24,000 a year. Portfolio continues growing from 48 to 67, 19 years, only withdrawing $35,000 a year, 3.94%, below safe rate. The math works because they're in a low-cost location and the portfolio has time to recover between 48 and 67 before Social Security kicks in. Scenario 4. The late starter. Starting age 35, just started focusing on retirement, current income $75,000, income growth, aggressive career changes reaches $130,000 by age 45, savings rate extreme, 50+%. Also builds freelance income generating $20,000 a year by age 45. Retirement age, 50. This person has to be extreme because they started late. Age 35 to 37, earning $75,000, saving $30,000 per year, 40%. Age 38 to 40, earning $90,000, saving $45,000 per year, 50%. Age 41 to 43, earning $110,000, saving $60,500 per year, 55%. Age 44 to 50, earning $130,000, saving $71,500 per year, 55%. Total contributed $703,000. At 8.5% returns, $1,168,000 at age 50. Plus freelance income, $20,000 per year. Total needs from the portfolio, $45,000 per year. At 3.5%, needs $1,285,714. Shortfall, $117,714. But they have flexibility. They can work freelance part-time during early retirement years to bridge the gap. They can work 2 more years to 52 and easily hit the number, or accept slightly higher withdrawal rate, 3.85%, knowing they can supplement with freelance. Okay, if you've made it this far, you're serious about this, and I promised you something special at the end, the calculation that most people never see. We're almost there, but first we need to talk about risk. Here's the risk management framework. Here's what keeps me up at night about early retirement. Sequence of returns risk. This is the silent killer of early retirement plans, and most people don't understand it until it's too late. Let me explain with a scenario that'll make this crystal clear. You retire at 45 with exactly $1.5 million. You plan to withdraw $52,500 per year, 3.5%. Everything should work perfectly based on historical averages. Scenario A, good sequence. Year 1, market up 8%. You withdraw $52,500 and balance $1,567,500. Year 2, market up 12%. You withdraw $54,075 and balance $1,701,065. Year 3, market down 15%. You withdraw $55,697 and balance $1,560,315. Year 4, market up 10%. You withdraw $57,368 and balance $1,659,079. After 4 years, you're actually ahead of where you started despite withdrawals. The good returns early on gave you a cushion. Scenario B, bad sequence, same returns, different order. Year 1, market down 5%. You withdraw $52,500 and balance $1,372,500. Year 2, market down 20%. You withdraw $54,075 and balance $1,043,905. Year 3, market down 15%. You withdraw $55,697 and balance $831,223. Year 4, market up 10%. You withdraw $57,368 and balance $856,557. After 4 years, you've lost 43% of your portfolio value. Even though the market eventually recovers, you've locked in losses by withdrawing during the down years. This person might run out of money in their 60s, while person A is totally fine. Same starting amount, same withdrawal strategy, same market returns, just different order. This is why you need that cash buffer I talked about earlier. When the market tanks, you stop selling stocks and live off your cash bucket until things recover. Here's how to actually implement this. The 3-bucket system in detail. Bucket 1, cash, 2 to 3 years expenses, $105,000 to $157,500. High-yield savings account, money market funds, short-term treasury bills. Purpose, sleep insurance and withdrawal source during bear markets. Bucket 2, conservative growth, 5 to 7 years expenses, $262,500 to $367,500. Intermediate term bond funds, dividend aristocrat stocks, balanced funds. Purpose, refill bucket 1 every few years, provide moderate growth. Bucket 3, growth, everything else, $975,000 to $1,132,500. Stock index funds, S&P 500, total market, international, small cap value, emerging markets, small allocation. Purpose, long-term growth, don't touch for 10+ years. Each year, you refill bucket 1 from bucket 2. Every 3 to 5 years, you refill bucket 2 from bucket 3, but only when the market is up. During bear markets, you leave bucket 3 alone entirely. This system lets you ride out 2 to 3 year bear markets without selling stocks at losses. The what-if scenarios you need to plan for. Here's the big ones. What if there's a Japan-style lost decade where the market goes nowhere for 10 years? Your withdrawal rate needs to be conservative enough, 3 to 3.5%, to handle this. You might also need to reduce spending by 10 to 15% during this period. What if inflation averages 5% instead of 3% for a decade? You need flexibility in your spending. Identify $10,000 to $15,000 in expenses that are nice to have, but not essential. Travel less, eat out less, postpone major purchases. What if you have a major health crisis at 50? You need excellent health insurance, we covered this, plus a healthcare emergency fund of $25,000 to $50,000 separate from your living expenses. What if your partner leaves or dies? Life insurance until you hit your retirement number. At least $500,000 to $1 million term life on each person. Once you're financially independent, you can drop it. The people who successfully retire early aren't just optimistic planners, they're pessimistic planners. They assume things will go wrong and build in buffers.
All right, we're getting close to the end here. Let me pull all of this together into one comprehensive calculation, the actual formula you need to figure out if you can retire at 45. Here's what you need to know. 1. Your annual expenses in retirement. Be honest, be thorough. 2. Your safe withdrawal rate, 3.5% for early retirement, 4% if you're more aggressive. 3. Any additional income streams, rentals, side businesses, pensions. 4. Your current net worth, investments only, not home equity, unless you're planning to downsize. 5. Your current monthly savings. 6. Expected return rate, 7 to 8% is reasonable for stock-heavy portfolio. 7. Years until target retirement age. Let me walk through the complete calculation with a specific example. Target retirement age, 45. Current age, 32. Years to save, 13. Annual expenses. Housing, $18,000. Healthcare, $8,400. Food, $9,000. Transportation, $3,600. Insurance, $2,400. Entertainment/travel, $12,000. Miscellaneous, $6,000. Total, $59,400. Add 10% buffer for unexpected, $65,340 per year. Additional income streams. Rental property, net, $9,600 per year. Freelance/consulting, conservative, $6,000 per year. Total, $15,600 per year. Amount needed from the portfolio, $49,740 per year. Target portfolio size at 3.5% withdrawal, $49,740 divided by 0.035 equals $1,421,143. Current situation. Current portfolio, $125,000. Monthly savings, $2,800. That's $33,600 per year. Expected return, 8% annually. The math. Starting with $125,000, adding $33,600 per year for 13 years at 8% annual return, using the future value formula, FV equals PV times 1 plus R to the N plus PMT times 1 plus R to the N minus 1 divided by R, where PV equals $125,000, present value, PMT equals $33,600, annual payment, R equals 0.08, 8% return, N equals 13 years.
FV equals $125,000 times 1.08 to the power of 13 plus $33,600 times 1.6885 divided by 0.08. FV equals $332,760 plus $33,600 times 21.106. FV equals $332,760 plus $709,162. FV equals $1,041,922. Reality check. Target, $1,421,143. Projected, $1,041,922. Shortfall, $379,221. Options to bridge the gap. Option 1, increase savings. Need an extra $379,221 in 13 years. $379,221 divided by 21.106 growth factor equals $17,968 per year. Need to save $51,568 per year instead of $33,600. That's an additional $1,497 per month. Option 2, work 3 more years to age 48. Current trajectory, $1,041,922 at age 45. Continue saving $33,600 per year for 3 more years. $1,041,922 times 1.08 to the power of 3 plus $33,600 times 3.246 equals $1,312,323 plus $109,079 equals $1,421,402. This works. Option 3, reduce expenses. Instead of needing $49,740 from portfolio, need $40,000. Target portfolio, $40,000 divided by 0.035 equals $1,142,857. Projected, $1,041,922. Shortfall, $100,935. Could bridge by working 1 more year to 46 or cutting $9,740 in expenses. Option 4, higher side income. If you can generate $20,000 per year in side income instead of $15,600, need $45,340 from portfolio. Target, $45,340 divided by 0.035 equals $1,295,429. Projected, $1,041,922. Shortfall, $253,577. Still need to work 2 more years or increase savings. This is the real calculation. Not some vague save $1 million, the actual math based on your specific situation. Now, the one thing nobody tells you about early retirement. Okay, here it is, the secret I promised at the beginning, the thing that changes the entire game. Most early retirement calculations assume you stop earning money completely at 45 and never work again. But that's not realistic, and more importantly, it's not optimal. Here's what the most successful early retirees actually do. They work, just differently. They don't have jobs, they don't have bosses, but they do things that generate income. And because they're not reliant on that income for survival, they can be selective about what they do. Let me show you why this matters mathematically. Standard approach. Retire at 45 with $1.5 million. Withdraw $52,500 per year, 3.5%. Hope the portfolio lasts 50+ years. Hybrid approach. Retire at 45 with $1.2 million, withdraw $42,000 per year, 3.5%, generate $15,000 to $25,000 per year doing work you actually enjoy. Total annual income, $57,000 to $67,000. The second approach requires $300,000 less in savings. That's potentially 3 to 4 years of working a job you hate versus retiring earlier and doing work you choose. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because you're only withdrawing $42,000 instead of $52,500, your portfolio has more room to grow. After 10 years, the first person's portfolio might be worth $1.6 million if markets are decent. The second person's portfolio might be worth $1.8 million. By age 55, the person who worked during retirement is actually in a better financial position than the person who didn't, even though they retired with less money. And let me tell you what this work actually looks like for most early retirees. Consulting 5 to 10 hours a week in their field of expertise, running a small online business, courses, coaching, products, managing rental properties, freelance work on interesting projects only, seasonal work they enjoy, like working at a ski resort in winter, creating content, YouTube, blog, podcast, that eventually monetizes. This isn't a job. There's no boss, no schedule you don't control, no office you have to go to. If you want to travel for 3 months, you do. If you want to take on 0 projects for 6 months, you can. But having the option to generate $1,000 to $2,000 per month doing something enjoyable completely transforms the math of early retirement.
Here's the calculation that changes everything. Traditional early retirement target, 25 to 30 times annual expenses. Hybrid early retirement target, 18 to 22 times annual expenses, if you can generate 20 to 30% of expenses through enjoyable work. On $60,000 a year expenses, traditional need $1.5 to $1.8 million. Hybrid, $1.08 to $1.32 million. That's a $400,000 to $500,000 difference. That's 5 to 7 years of working a traditional job. And here's what nobody tells you. Most people who retire early end up doing this anyway. They get bored, they have skills people value, opportunities come up, they start saying yes to interesting projects. So why not plan for it from the beginning? Why not reduce your retirement number by 25% knowing you'll probably generate some income doing things you actually want to do? This is the secret. Early retirement isn't about never working again. It's about having enough money that you never have to work, which gives you the freedom to work on things you actually care about. The people who fail at early retirement are the ones who think they're going to sit on a beach for 40 years. The people who succeed are the ones who stay engaged, keep learning, keep creating value, but on their own terms. The final action plan, your 90-day roadmap. All right, we've covered a lot, like a lot. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that's normal. But here's what I want you to do in the next 90 days. This isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about getting started and building momentum. Days 1 to 7, the assessment phase. Day 1 to 2, calculate your current net worth. List all assets, retirement accounts, taxable investments, cash, home equity, if applicable. List all debts, student loans, car loans, credit cards, mortgage. Net worth equals assets minus debts. Don't judge it, just know the number. Days 3 to 4, track your spending for a baseline. Look at the last 3 months of spending. Categorize everything: housing, transportation, food, entertainment. Calculate your monthly average, multiply by 12 to get annual spending. Day 5, calculate your current savings rate. Annual savings divided by gross annual income times 100. Be honest about what you're actually saving, not what you wish you were saving. Day 6, set your target retirement age. When do you actually want to retire? 45 is just a number. Maybe you want 42. Maybe 50 is fine. Be realistic, but also ambitious. Day 7, calculate your retirement number. Annual expenses times 28.5 for a 3.5% withdrawal rate. This is your target. Days 8 through 30, the optimization phase. Week 2, audit your big 3 expenses. Housing, can you reduce this? Should you? Transportation, what are you driving and what's it costing you? Food, track every food expense for 1 week, including coffee runs and snacks. Week 3, income growth plan.
Update your resume and LinkedIn. Identify 3 skills you could develop that would increase your income. Research what people in the next level up from your position make. Set an income growth target for the next 12 months. Week 4. Automate your savings. Set up automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday. Increase 401k contribution by 1 to 2%. You won't even notice. Open a Roth IRA if you don't have one. Start with what you can, even if it's just $100 a month. Weeks 5 through 6. Max out tax-advantaged accounts. In order: 401k to company match, if not doing this already, HSA if you have access, Roth IRA, then more to 401k if possible. Week 7, open a taxable brokerage account. Choose a broker: Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they're all good. Set up automatic monthly investments. Buy low-cost index funds, VTI or VOO for stocks, and BND for bonds. Week 8, debt strategy. List all debts with interest rates. Anything over 8%, create an aggressive payoff plan. Anything under 5%, pay minimums and invest the difference. 5 to 8%, your call based on risk tolerance. Week 9, side income exploration. Brainstorm 10 ways you could generate extra income. Pick one to test. Spend 5 hours on it and see if it has potential. If not, try another one next month. Week 10, portfolio review. Check your asset allocation. Make sure you're properly diversified. Rebalance if needed. Sell what's up, buy what's down. Set calendar reminder to do this annually. Week 11, healthcare research. Calculate what health insurance would cost if you didn't have employer coverage. Research ACA marketplace options in your state. Understand the subsidy structure. Factor this into your retirement expense calculations. Week 12, the 90-day review. Calculate your net worth again. Has it increased? Review your progress on all action items. Set targets for next 90 days. Celebrate what you've accomplished. The maintenance plan every 90 days after this. Quarter 1 of each year. Calculate your net worth. Review and rebalance your portfolio. Adjust retirement projections with current numbers. Adjust savings rate if income changed. Quarter 2 of each year. Evaluate career progress. Am I on track for income growth? Research side income opportunities. Review major expenses. Any opportunities to optimize. Quarter 3 of each year. Tax planning check-in. Max out contributions before year end. Consider tax loss harvesting opportunities. Quarter 4 of each year. Annual review. Where am I versus where I plan to be? Adjust strategy for next year. Celebrate progress.
Look, I've given you all the numbers, all the strategies, all the frameworks, but here's the truth. None of it matters if you don't make one fundamental shift in how you think about money. Most people think about money as something to spend. They earn it, they spend it, they earn more, they spend more. It's a treadmill. The people who retire early think about money as something to deploy. Every dollar is a soldier that can go to work for you. When you invest $1,000 at 8% annual returns, that's $1,000 that will become $2,159 in 10 years, $4,661 in 20 years, $10,063 in 30 years, without you doing anything. That's 10 soldiers that become 10,063 soldiers over 30 years, each one working for you 24/7, never taking a day off. When you buy a $50,000 car instead of a $25,000 car, you're not just spending $25,000. You're spending $53,973 over 10 years. That's the opportunity cost, what that money could have become if you'd invested it instead. Once you start thinking this way, spending decisions change. Not because you're depriving yourself, but because you're consciously choosing between present consumption and future freedom. Is the fancy apartment worth 2 years of working? Is the new car worth 3 years? Is eating out 4 times a week worth 1 year? These are the real questions. And here's what's interesting. Once you start making these trade-offs consciously, you often realize that many of the things you spend money on don't actually make you that happy. You're spending on autopilot, not with intention. The $6 latte every morning? That's $2,190 per year. Over 20 years at 8% returns, that's $108,035.
Is that morning latte worth $108,035? Maybe it is if you genuinely love it and it's part of your morning ritual, but maybe it's not, and you'd be just as happy with coffee you made at home. The key is consciousness. Make every spending decision a conscious choice, not a default. What they don't tell you about the first 5 years after you retire early. Because here's where a lot of people struggle, and nobody talks about it. Year 1, euphoria and adjustment. You did it. You're free. This year usually feels amazing. You sleep in, you travel, you do all the things you couldn't do while working. But around month 6 to 9, something starts to shift. You start feeling aimless. The novelty wears off. This is normal. Year 2, the identity crisis. This is the hard year. You're not working, but you're not retired in the traditional sense. You're too young for that. So who are you? What do you tell people at parties? This is when having a project or purpose becomes crucial. The people who thrive start something meaningful in this year. Year 3, the new normal. By year 3, you've figured out your rhythm. You have activities you care about, a routine that works, a sense of purpose that isn't tied to a job. This is when early retirement starts to feel truly sustainable. Year 4 to 5, reinvention. Most early retirees start doing something professionally again by year 4 or 5, but it's different from work. It's stuff they choose, not stuff they have to do. The people who make it through those first 3 years successfully are the ones who planned for this transition. They didn't just plan the financial logistics, they planned what they'd actually do with their freedom. Before you retire, have answers to these questions. What will I do with my first year of freedom? What have I always wanted to learn but never had time for? What cause or community do I want to contribute to? What creative project have I been putting off? Who do I want to spend more time with? These aren't fluffy questions, they're essential, because retiring early isn't the end goal. Living a meaningful, fulfilling life on your own terms is the end goal. The money just makes it possible. The final calculation. All right, let's bring this home. You've got all the pieces. Now let's put together your personal early retirement formula. Step 1. Determine your annual retirement expenses. Fixed expenses. Housing, blank. Healthcare, blank. Insurance, blank. Utilities, blank. Subtotal, blank. Variable expenses. Food, blank. Transportation, blank. Entertainment, blank. Travel, blank. Miscellaneous, blank. Subtotal, blank. Total annual expenses, blank. Add 15% buffer, blank times 1.15 equals blank. Step 2. Calculate additional income streams. Rental income, blank per year. Side business, consulting, blank per year. Dividend portfolio, blank per year. Other, blank per year. Total additional income, blank. Step 3. Calculate portfolio need. Total expenses, blank, minus additional income, minus blank, equals portfolio withdrawal need, blank. Divide by safe withdrawal rate, blank divided by 0.035. Target portfolio value, blank. Step 4. Calculate current trajectory. Current portfolio value, blank. Annual contribution, blank. Expected annual return, 8%. Years until target age, blank. Future value equals current value times 1.08 to the power of years plus annual contribution times 1.08 to the power of years minus 1 divided by 0.08. Projected portfolio value, blank. Step 5. Gap analysis. Target value, blank. Projected value, minus blank. Gap equals blank. Step 6. Bridge the gap. Option A, increase savings. Gap divided by growth factor equals additional annual savings needed. Blank divided by blank equals blank per year, blank per month. Option B, extend timeline. Work blank additional years to hit target. Usually 2 to 4 makes a massive difference due to compounding. Option C, reduce expenses. Reduce annual expenses by blank. New target portfolio equals blank divided by 0.035. Option D, increase income. Generate additional blank annually in side income. Reduces portfolio need by blank at 3.5% rule. Your personal roadmap. Based on this calculation, my plan is to increase savings by blank per month, grow income to blank per year within blank years, reduce expenses by blank annually, plan to generate blank per year in retirement income, target retirement age, blank, target portfolio value, blank. Write this down. Put it somewhere you'll see it. Review it every quarter. Adjust as things change, but most importantly, take action today.
Your next steps. If you've watched this far, you're in the top 1% of people who are actually serious about early retirement. Most people dream about it. You're different. You're learning the actual math. So here's what I want you to do right now, today. 1. Open a spreadsheet and plug in your actual numbers, not hypothetical numbers, your numbers. Where you are today, what you're earning, what you're spending, what you're saving. 2. Calculate your retirement number using the 3.5% rule. Write it down, stare at it. It's probably less scary than you thought and more achievable than you believed. 3. Do one thing from the 90-day plan today. Open an account, set up an automatic transfer, update your resume, send one networking email. Just one thing. 4. Subscribe if you found this valuable. I break down more money topics like this. And hit the like button if this helped clarify the path to early retirement for you. 5. Most importantly, make a decision. Decide that you're actually going to do this. Not try or hope or maybe someday. Decide. Then reverse engineer your life to make it happen. Look, retiring at 45 isn't for everyone. Some people love their careers and want to work forever. That's totally valid. But if you're watching this video, you're probably not one of those people. You want freedom. You want options. You want to wake up and spend your time how you choose, not how your boss chooses. It's possible. The math works. Thousands of people have done it, and most of them started from zero or even negative with debt. The difference between them and everyone else wasn't luck or inheritance. It was knowledge, discipline, and consistency over 15 to 20 years. You now have the knowledge. The discipline and consistency, that's on you. But here's what I know. You watched a 2-hour video about retirement math. You didn't zone out, you didn't quit. You stuck with it. That tells me you have what it takes. So, go make it happen. This isn't just about money. It's about designing a life you don't need to retire from. But having the money gives you that option. And having options is freedom. That's the real math behind retiring at 45.